The Jerusalem Bible, Exodus chapter 25. Contributions for the Sanctuary. Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "Tell the sons of Israel to set aside a contribution for me. You shall accept this contribution from every man whose heart prompts him to give it. You shall accept from them the following contributions: gold, silver, and bronze, purple stuffs of violet shade and red, crimson, fine linen, goat's hair, ram's skins dyed red, fine leather, acacia wood, oil for the lamps, spices for the chrism, and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and gems to be set in an ephod and pectoral. Build me a sanctuary, so that I may dwell among them. In making the tabernacle and its furnishings, you must follow exactly the pattern I shall show you. You are to make me an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, 1.5 cubits high. You are to plate it inside and out with pure gold, and decorate it all around with a gold molding. You will cast 4 gold rings for the ark, and fix them to its 4 supports, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. You will also make shafts of acacia wood plated with gold, and pass the shafts through the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark by these. The shafts must remain in the rings of the ark and not be withdrawn. Inside the ark you will place the testimony that I shall give you. Further, you are to make a throne of mercy of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide. For the 2 ends of this throne of mercy, you are to make 2 golden cherubs. You are to make them of beaten gold. Make the first cherub for one end, and the second for the other, and fasten them to the 2 ends of the throne of mercy, so that they make one piece with it. The cherubs are to have their wings spread upwards, so that they overshadow the throne of mercy. They must face one another, their faces toward the throne of mercy. You must place the throne of mercy on the top of the ark. Inside the ark you must place the testimony that I shall give you. There I shall come to meet you. There, from above the throne of mercy, from between the 2 cherubs that are on the ark of the testimony, I shall give you all my commands for the sons of Israel. You are to make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You are to plate it with pure gold, and decorate it all around with a gold molding. You are to fit it with struts, 1 hand's breadth wide, and decorate these with a golden molding. You are to make for it 4 gold rings, and fix these at the 4 corners where the 4 legs are. The rings must lie close to the struts to hold the shafts for carrying the table. You are to make the shafts of acacia wood, and plate them with gold. The table is to be carried by these. You are to make dishes, cups, jars, and libation bowls for it. You are to make these of pure gold. Of the table, before me, you must place the bread of continual offering. You are to make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand must be of beaten gold, base and stem. Its cups, calyx, and petals must be of one piece with it. 6 branches must extend from the sides of it, 3 from one side, 3 from the other. The first branch is to carry 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and petals. The second branch, too, is to carry 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and petals. And similarly for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. The lampstand itself is to carry 4 cups, shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and petals. Thus, 1 calyx under the first 2 branches extending from the lampstand, 1 under the next pair, 1 under the last pair, corresponding to the 6 branches extending from the lampstand. The calyxes and the branches must be of one piece with the lampstand, and the whole made from a single piece of pure gold, beaten out. Then you ought to make lamps for it, 7 of them, and set them so that they throw their light towards the front of it. The snuffers and trays must be of pure gold. You are to use a talent of pure gold for making the lampstand and all its accessories. See that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. The Jerusalem Bible, Exodus chapter 26. The tabernacle itself you are to make with 10 sheets of fine twined linen, of purple stuffs, violet shade and red, and of crimson stuffs. You are to have these sheets finely brocaded with cherubs. The length of a single sheet is to be 28 cubits, its width 4 cubits, all of the sheets to be of the same size. 5 of these sheets must be joined to each other, and the other 5 similarly. You must attach loops of violet stuff to the border of the last sheet in one set, and do the same for the border of the last sheet in the other set. You are to put 50 loops on the first sheet, and matching them one by one, 50 loops on the border of the last sheet in the second set. You are to make 50 gold clasps, and draw the sheets together. In this way, the tabernacle will be a unified whole. You are to make sheets of goat's hair to form a tent over the tabernacle. You will make 11 of these. The length of a single sheet is to be 30 cubits, its width 4 cubits. The 11 sheets to be all of the same size. You must join 5 of these sheets together into one, the remaining 6 into another. The 6 you will fold double over the front of the tent. You must attach 50 loops to the border of the last sheet in one set, and do the same for the border of the last sheet in the second set. You must make 50 bronze clasps and put them into the loops, so as to draw the tent together and make it a unified whole. As one sheet of the tent will be left over, half of this extra sheet is to hang over the back of the tabernacle. The extra cubit on either side along the length of the tent sheets is to hang over the sides of the tabernacle as a covering for it. For the tent, you will further make a covering of ram skins dyed red, and a covering of fine leather to spread over that. You are to make frames of acacia wood for the tabernacle, these to stand upright. Each frame is to be 10 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide. Each frame must be fitted with twin tenons. For all the frames of the tabernacle you must do this. You are to make the frames for the tabernacle, 20 frames for the southern side facing the south country. You are to make 40 silver sockets for putting under the 20 frames, thus 2 sockets under the first frame to receive its 2 tenons, and so on for the other frames. The other side of the tabernacle, on the north, is to have 20 frames, supported by 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under each frame. For the back of the tabernacle, on the west, you must make 6 frames. you are to make 2 frames for the corners at the back of the tabernacle. These frames must be coupled at their lower end, and so on the top, up to the level of the first ring. This for the 2 frames that are to form the 2 corners. Thus there will be 8 frames with their 16 silver sockets, 2 sockets under the first frame, and so on. You are to make crossbars of acacia wood, 5 to hold together the frames for the one side of the tabernacle, 5 to hold the frames for the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 to hold the frames that form the west end of the tabernacle. The middle bar, fixed halfway up, is to run from one end to the other. The frames are to be plated with gold, and with gold rings on them, to make the crossbars, which you are to plate with gold. This is how you are to erect the tabernacle, according to the model shown to you on the mountain. You are to make a veil of purple stuffs, violet shade and red, of crimson stuffs, and of fine twined linen. You are to have it finely embroidered with cherubs. You are to hang it on 4 posts of acacia wood, plated with gold, and furnished with golden hooks, and set in 4 silver sockets. You must hang the veil from the clasps that are behind the veil. You must place the ark of the testimony, and the veil will serve you to separate the holy place from the Holy of Holies. The throne of mercy you must place on top of the ark inside the Holy of Holies. The table you must set outside the veil, and the lampstand on the south side of the tabernacle opposite the table. You must put the table on the north side. For the entrance to the tent you are to make a screen of purple stuffs, violet shade and red, and of crimson stuffs and fine twined linen, the work of a skilled embroiderer. For this screen you are to make 5 posts of acacia wood plated with gold, with golden hooks. For these you are to cast 5 bronze sockets. The Jerusalem Bible, Exodus chapter 27, 1 through 19. You are to make the altar out of acacia wood, a square 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide, its height to be 3 cubits. At its 4 corners you are to put horns, the horns to be of one piece with it, plating it with bronze. For the altar you are to make pans for the ashes from the fat, shovels, sprinkling basins, hooks, fire pans. You must make all the vessels for the altar out of bronze. You are also to make a grating for it of bronze network, and on the 4 corners of this fix 4 bronze rings. This grating you must set under the altar's edge below, so that it reaches halfway up the altar. And for the altar you are to make shafts of acacia wood and plate them with bronze. These are to be passed through the rings, so that they are on either side of the altar when it is carried. You are to make the altar hollow, of boards. You will make it in the way that was shown to you on the mountain. You are to make the court of the tabernacle, facing the south country. On the southern side, the hangings of the court are to be of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long on one side. Their 20 bronze posts are to be set in 20 bronze sockets, to have their hooks and their rods of silver. So too, for the northern side, there are to be hangings 100 cubits long, and 20 posts set in 20 bronze sockets, with their hooks and rods of silver. Across the width of the court, on the western side, there are to be 50 cubits of hangings, carried on 10 posts, set in 10 sockets. The width of the court on the eastern side, facing the sunrise, is to be 50 cubits. On one side of the gateway there are to be 15 cubits of hangings, carried on 3 posts, set in their 3 sockets. On the other side of the gateway there are also to be 15 cubits of hangings, carried on 3 posts, set in their 3 sockets. The gateway to the court is to consist of a screen 20 cubits wide, made of purple stuffs, violet shade and red, of crimson stuffs, and fine twined linen, the work of a skilled embroiderer, carried on 4 posts, set in their 4 sockets. All the posts enclosing the court are to be connected by silver rods. Their hooks are to be of silver, their sockets of bronze. The length of the court is to be 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, its height 5 cubits. All the hangings are to be made of fine twined linen, and their sockets of bronze. All the furnishings for whatever use in the tabernacle, all the pegs of it and of the court, must be of bronze. The Jerusalem Bible, 1 Kings 5:12 through 6:13. The fame of Solomon. He composed 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He could talk about plants, from the cedar in Lebanon to the hyssop growing on the wall, and he could talk of animals and birds and reptiles and fish. Men from all nations came to hear Solomon's wisdom, and he received gifts from all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. Hiram, the king of Tyre, sent an embassy to Solomon, having learnt that he had been anointed king in succession to his father, and because Hiram had always been a friend of David. And Solomon sent this message to Hiram: "You are aware that David my father was unable to build a temple for the name of Yahweh his God, because his enemies waged war on him from all sides, until Yahweh should put them under his control. But now Yahweh my God has given me rest on every side. Not one enemy, no calamities. I therefore plan to build a temple for the name of Yahweh my God, just as Yahweh said to David my father, your son, whom I will place on your throne to succeed you, shall be the man to build a temple for my name. So now have cedars of Lebanon cut down for me. My servants will work with your servants, and I will pay for the hire of your servants at whatever rate you fix. As you know, we have no one as skilled in felling trees as the Sidonians." When Hiram heard what Solomon had said, he was delighted. "Now blessed be Yahweh," he said, "who has given David a wise son to rule over this great people." And Hiram sent word to Solomon, "I have received your message. For my part, I will supply all you want in the way of cedar wood and juniper. Your servants will bring these down from Lebanon to the sea, and I shall have them towed by sea to any place you name it. I shall discharge them there, and you will take them over. For your part, you will see to the provisioning of my household as I direct." So Hiram provided Solomon with all the cedar wood and juniper he wanted, while Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat to feed his household, and 20,000 cores of pure oil. Solomon gave Hiram this every year. Yahweh gave Solomon wisdom, as he had promised him. Good relations persisted between Solomon and Hiram, and the two of them concluded a treaty. King Solomon raised a levy throughout Israel for every labor, and levy numbered 20,000 men. He sent these to Lebanon in relays, 10,000 a month. They spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adar was in charge of the forced labor. Solomon also had 70,000 porters and 80,000 quarrymen in the mountains, as well as the administrators' officials who supervised the work, 3,300 of them in charge of the men employed in the work. At the king's orders, they quarried huge stones, special stones, for the laying of the temple foundations, dressed stones. Solomon's workmen and Hiram's workmen and the Gibeonites cut and assembled the wood and stone for the building of the temple. Chapter 6. In the 480th year after the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt, the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of Yahweh. The temple that King Solomon built for Yahweh was 60 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 25 in height. The ulam in front of the hekel and the temple was 20 cubits long across the width of the temple, and 10 cubits wide along the length of the temple. He made windows for the temple with frames and lattice work. He also built an annex against the temple, round the hekel and the dibir, and made side tiers all around. The lower story was 5 cubits wide, the middle one 6 cubits, and the third 7 cubits. For round the temple on the outside he had placed offsets, so that this was not attached to the temple walls. The building of the temple was done with quarry-dressed stones. No sound of hammer or pick or any iron tool was to be heard in the temple while it was being built. The entrance to the lower story was at the right-hand corner of the temple, and access to the middle story above was by trapdoors, and so from the middle story to the third. He built the temple, completed it, and covered it with cedar wood. He built the annex on the whole length of the temple. It was 5 cubits high, and was attached to the temple by beams of cedar wood. And the word of Yahweh came to Solomon. This house you are building, if you follow my statutes and obey my ordinances, and faithfully follow my commandments, I will fulfill the promise I made about you to your father David. And I will make my home among the sons of Israel, and never forsake Israel my people. The Jerusalem Bible, Hebrews 9, 1 through 10. The first covenant also had its laws governing worship, and its sanctuary, a sanctuary on this earth. There was a tent which comprised 2 compartments. The first, in which the lampstand, the table, and the presentation loaves were kept, was called the holy place. Then beyond the second veil, an innermost part, which was called the Holy of Holies, to which belonged the gold altar of incense, and the ark of the covenant, plated all over with gold. In this were kept the gold jar containing the manna, Aaron's branch that grew the buds, and the stone tablets of the covenant. On top of it was the throne of mercy, and outspread over it were the glorious cherubs. This is not the time to go into greater detail about this. Under these provisions, priests are constantly going into the outer tent to carry out their acts of worship. But the second tent is entered only once a year, and then only by the high priest, who must go in by himself and take the blood to offer for his own faults and the people's. By this, the Holy Spirit is showing that no one has the right to go into the sanctuary as long as the outer tent remains standing. It is a symbol for this present time. None of the gifts and sacrifices offered under these regulations can possibly bring any worshiper to perfection in his inner self. They are rules about the outward life, connected with foods and drinks and washings at various times, and intended to be enforced only until it should be time to reform them.